Look, let's be very clear. This isn't about Hunter Biden's white privilege. It's about Hunter Biden's Democrat privilege. Because Donald Trump Jr. showed up for 5 congressional subpoenas. There was never this circus where he was subpoenaed by House Democrats and he showed up on the Senate side or showed up at the White House to answer in some fake, phony, lame press conference, not actually going to the House and doing what he was compelled by a subpoena to do. Hunter Biden did that. And then he has the unmitigated gall to show up here when we know that we're going through actually the legislation for contempt with, by the way, Mr. Chairman, we should actually get to the legislation of contempt. The speechifying is great, but let's do our business, members. He has the gall to come here, show up, and then when the Democrats are saying, hey, he wants to speak, he leaves. This is a joke. This is a farce. The man has been subpoenaed by Congress. Oh, and by the way, the January 6th committee, Mr. Raskin, which you did sit on, by the way, that was not a normally ordered committee of Congress because Nancy Pelosi did not want the Republican members that then Leader McCarthy put up.
According to the courts, it was.
I my time, sir.
Will you yield for a correction?
I was respectful of your time. I didn't say anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward with our business. He should be held in contempt. There was a subpoena. He did not answer it. Any other American will be held in contempt by Congress. Any other. This is Democrat privilege of the highest order. Let's do our jobs. I yield.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to address briefly, quickly, that moment about privilege and all of this that we're seeing here. It was a very beautiful speech by the gentlelady who, as she mentioned, was helped lead on the now majority side, the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Subcommittee. But I think it's so exemplary of the point that she also oversaw the elimination of the Civil Rights Subcommittee on this committee, which really kind of gives the whole game away. We show up, we give speeches, we give flowery words, but at the end of the day, participate in the structural erosion of the rights and representation of people that are marginalized, women, people of color, people that just need to see their due process and civil liberties protected in this country. But I will move on. As also the Republican side had mentioned in their many raisings of the January 6th committee, that it's not just Hunter Biden, you, me, any individual subject to equal treatment under the law, to be held up to accountability under the law, but it is also these committees and this committee that is subject to oversight and law. We must comply with the law here as well. Now, I may be one of the very few people that actually believes in Congress, in this country. But I do, and many of us do here. And we have an obligation to engage in good faith participation to execute and comply with a subpoena. The chairman said in front of the country several times to Hunter Biden, you can show up here in front of the world, in front of the public. Hunter Biden took him up on that offer. He said, I will show up in public. I will show up in public. He showed up here today. He showed up here in the past. And Mr. Chairman, I know you do your best with what you've got, but you've got members here that have submitted falsified evidence to the record. You have members here that have submitted and mischaracterized closed-door hearings, and people want to say back and forth at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what party it's happened from. You've got members who've engaged in revenge porn in this committee. So it is understandable why Hunter Biden would want to testify in front of the public for the American people to be able to witness that testimony for themselves. You've got members who've defied subpoenas. You've got members who we are 1 year into the term asking what the rules are at the beginning of the committee. The book was given to us on day one. And so what we should do is allow the man to testify. I believe in the power of the Oversight Committee. Frankly, I believe in it regardless of whether Republicans or Democrats have the chair, because I believe that this committee should have the power of oversight, and we cannot do that on a partisan basis. And so for that, I implore this committee to allow Hunter Biden to testify publicly. I implore and I ask for that to happen. And we cannot do that by getting engaged in this back and forth on a defiance of the subpoena. Let him comply. Let him do it today. Let him do it tomorrow. but let the man do it. And with that, I yield back to the ranking member.
Thank you, Ms. Ocasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First, it was said in this hearing, Mr. Chairman, about you specifically, that you repeatedly said you would give Mr. Biden any opportunity. He could choose which one to come and speak in front of this committee. He could do it by deposition. He could do it by open hearing. It was up to him. The truth of the matter, though, is, members, is that the chairman's words are not binding. Like, no other member's words of Congress are really not binding. The binding article.
Point of order. Does the chairman agree with that? Point of order. Does the chairman agree?
Are you going to restore my time?
Point of order. Just point of order.
Okay.
Does the chairman agree that the chairman's words are not binding on the committee?
That's not a point of order. It has nothing to do with the order of this hearing. Thank you. Can I go back to 4 minutes and 34 seconds? That's where I was before I was interrupted by Mr. Raskin.
Yes, reset the
Thank
clock.
you. Thank you. What is binding is the actual written document, the written language in the subpoena, because a subpoena from this committee is also signed off on by the clerk of the House. That is the binding document that matters here. That is what governs. That's number one. Number two, that was said in this hearing. It was said that our witnesses said that there was no basis for an impeachment. But remember, members on the Democrat side of the aisle, what was said by Mr. Turley at the time was that there was plenty of evidence for the continuation of an impeachment inquiry. And the purpose of that hearing was the relevance basis for an impeachment inquiry. The House has now voted for an impeachment inquiry. And one of the first things that the House did after the vote of an impeachment inquiry was to subpoena Hunter Biden to appear. Hunter Biden has evaded that subpoena. So flagrantly did he evade it that he decided to show up at the Senate side to give a press conference, and Eric Swalwell, a member of the House, helped him get that time on the Senate side to give a press conference. That's a flagrant violation of a congressional subpoena. Secondarily, he has the gall to show up here when we're actually discussing contempt. And he didn't stay. He was sitting right over there. He's not here now. He said he wants to talk. He could have stayed through the whole proceeding. He chose to leave. That's his business. But he was subpoenaed to come here. Back in December, he chose not to of his own volition. He's in violation of that subpoena, a subpoena that was executed with the signature of the clerk of the House of Representatives. That is the document that is binding. That's what we work off of. Mr. Chairman, I actually want to submit for the record an article from The Hill written by Jonathan Turley, and it is titled Eric Swalwell and the Politics of Contempt.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I'm glad something got admitted to the record. Last, a couple other points. One quick point I want to make, and this is in reference to the minority's report about this $7.8 million. I want the minority to understand one very important distinction between President Biden and President Trump. President Trump has an international real estate portfolio that he has amassed over decades. I'm quite sure if you go back through all of the hotel receipts before he was president of the United States, that you had foreign dignitaries staying at Trump hotels all across the world.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm not going to yield, Mr. Raskin. I'm making a point because they're actually very nice hotels. They look good. People like staying there. President Trump was not running the Trump Organization when he was president of the United States. To my recollection, Eric Trump, the president's son, was actually running the Trump Organization when President Trump was president of the United States. So if he had a portfolio of hotels and people choose, through Expedia, through Kayak, through Hotels.com, if they choose to go and stay there, how is that the president being in violation of what the emoluments clause? Is that what you're citing? Stop. Ladies and gentlemen, America, this is ridiculous. The Biden family has no business. They've never had a business except for politics. And the one thing that the Oversight Committee, in conjunction with the Ways and Means Committee and in conjunction with the Judiciary Committee, has always been able to demonstrate is that they shook down foreign nations for millions, 26 million at the latest count and growing, millions. And there was never any business entity involved except public corruption and a pay-for-play scheme. The House Oversight Committee would like to get to the bottom of this under the impeachment inquiry of the House. We have questions for Hunter Biden. We issued a subpoena for him to answer said questions. He ignored a congressional subpoena as a private citizen. There are many attorneys on the other side of the aisle. If you had one of your clients in your private practice ignore a congressional subpoena as a private citizen, you would advise them not to, because they would be held in contempt and they would actually be punished by the Department of Justice. So I find it interesting
Will
to
the
see
gentleman
today.
yield so I
I'm
can
not going to
respond?
yield, Mr. Goldman, because I had a question for you earlier. You didn't want to take my question, so I'm not going to take yours. Thank you. So, in closing, I will say, private citizens, yes, they have a responsibility to answer congressional subpoenas. They do. Hunter Biden had it, and he was flagrant. He decided to give a press conference. So we're going to do this business, and he should be held in contempt by the full House of Representatives. I yield back.
Recognize Mr. Donald from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for coming out today. Really appreciate it. Mr. Edlow, real quick, it was said in previous testimony that roughly 3% of people who apply through the legal process of coming into the United States through the green card program, 3% of all that apply actually get approved. Can you speak to why that is the number? Is that accurate? Is that an accurate description?
I've not heard that number, so I don't want to talk about the percentage itself. I can tell you, Congressman, there are close to 1 million people that get green cards every year through the various pathways in, plus all the people that come in, have applied for asylum or have gotten in through refugee status and then ultimately became permanent residents, green card holders at that point too. So there is a robust process by which people are becoming green card holders every single year.
So there is a robust process upon which people are coming into the United States.
Yes.
Mr. Beer, I saw you over there, heard your testimony over there. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, absolutely not. If you compare the United States to other countries, it would take about 70 million people showing up in the United States tomorrow to get our immigrant share of our population to equal what we see in Australia, 35 million to get to where it is in Canada. The United States is an outlier for having a restrictive immigration policy.
Mr. Beer, do you think it is appropriate for the American government to model that of Australia and other countries around the world?
I think we should do what's in our best interest, and I think immigration can benefit the United States if done legally in an orderly manner.
Mr. Beer, do you think it's in the nation's best interest to have a massively open southern border that is largely controlled by the drug cartels?
Absolutely not.
So, Mr. Beer, a follow-up question to that. Do you think it is wise for the Biden administration to reverse its protocols at the southern border?
Its own protocols?
Yes.
I don't understand.
Why
would it reverse its own protocol?
Well, let's go back. You just said that the current situation at the southern border is not in the nation's interest. It is not wise for the nation to have that.
Yeah.
And since the basic predicate of this hearing, by any objective measure, is that the policy prescriptions by Joe Biden since he became president has led to a massively open southern border, do you believe it's in the nation's interest for President Biden to reverse course on his policy prescriptions when he became president on January 20th, 2021?
I don't agree with the premise. His policies didn't cause this.
So his policies have not allowed for 3 million entrants into the country through wide open asylum
Sure,
and association from detention?
Sure, people definitely came. I don't dispute the numbers.
Do you deny
Biden's policies didn't
Do you
cause
deny
it to
the
happen.
fact that the drug cartels are going to make $12 billion a year trafficking people into the United States?
We should defund the cartels by letting people come to this country legally. Then they wouldn't have to hire a cartel member.
Mr. Beer, how would they cross the southern border, which is largely controlled by the drug cartels on the Mexican side of the
They
border?
would get on a
How would they
plane.
trespass that?
They would get a visa and get on a plane.
So what you're advocating for is that the policy of the United States of America is that people can basically hop an airliner and come to the United States of their own volition and free will?
If they get vetted by the U.S. State Department, what's wrong with that?
Do you believe the U.S. State Department has the capability of vetting that many people?
Absolutely. All legal immigrants are paying fees in order to get vetted. They want to be vetted.
Mr.
They're
Beer,
desperate to get
we are
time
talking
to
about the
apply,
same
become
State
legal.
Department under Tony Blinken that couldn't evacuate 10,000 Americans from Afghanistan, that couldn't evacuate Americans out of Israel, where you had members of Congress go over to Israel to get 246 Americans out because the State Department was busy sending text messages and dropping voicemails into people's cell phones. That U.S. State Department can process millions of people coming into the United States.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the State Department has its challenges, but if you look at where it started at 83% visas being cut by the last administration, I mean, they gutted the State Department's visa processing, which is why they were not able to get Afghans out of Afghanistan.
Mr. B, I have a final question for you. We'll leave Afghanistan for another day. I disagree with you, but we'll leave that. I have a separate question for you. Do you believe the United States' current policy with respect to work authorizations, Medicare, essentially public charge doctrine with Joe Biden's administration changed from the Trump administration? Do you believe that would only juice immigration into the United States if people coming to apply for asylum directly through the U.S. State Department? That it would only increase the influx of people because they will be able to take advantage of the vast amount of the welfare state in the United States of America? Do you think it would bring more immigrants or less immigrants?
Look, I don't support immigrants being on welfare. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the question is. I think the city of New York has unfortunately decided to put everyone up in a hotel room and make their taxpayers pay for it. That's a bad choice for them. That's not the federal government has a limited role in deciding what New York State's or New York City's policies are.
So real quick question, sorry, Chairman, real quick question, quick follow-up to that. And I'll ask all three of you, actually. If you're gonna have open borders, can you have a welfare state at the same time? Mr. Redlow?
No.
Mr. Holman?
No.
Mr. Beer?
It's got to be restricted, and it is. Our legal immigration system restricts benefits to new legal permanent residents for 5 years.
Mr. Beer, I would strongly disagree with you because people are getting a lot of benefits the second they come into the United States of America, and it is wrong. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back.